Hey everyone, today we're going to show how to make your own leather dress belt. Hey everyone, this is Tim at Parcel Artisan Works. So I am replacing one of my old dress belts made from genuine leather, i.e. not really real leather. It is 1.25 inch strap, and I want to keep that buckle because I like that buckle. So the plan is to make a nicer version of this kind of belt. So this here is Wicket and Craig Natural Vachetta. I'm cutting about 1.75 inches or 2 inches on these straps. It doesn't have to be exact because most of the edging is going to be cut off the waist. You try to strike a balance between making sure that it's big enough to work with, but also not waste any leather. But again, this is 2 to 3 ounce, so that's what the front and back of the belt are going to be. And then I'm going to put a core of 5 to 6 ounce vachetta in the center of it. And the purpose of this belt is to improve my wardrobe, get rid of the older cheap belt that I've had for a long time and replace it with something nicer. And if I'm doing this, I wanted to bring you guys along so you can see how I would actually go about it. So I've cut the 2 straps out of 2-3. This is a 5 to 6 ounce piece of vachetta now. So go ahead and cut this out. I think the blade is starting to get dull on this strap cutter because I had to kind of finesse it. But what I'm also doing it with my left hand is I'm pulling it taut as I go. And it does make it easier, especially if the leather has a little bit softer hand like this vachetta does. And then when you put it away, roll it up, put the grain side out. This is Dacron non-stretch woven fabric with adhesive on the back. I'm cutting these at 3/4 inch, just same size as the inner core, the lining piece of 5/6. That's what I'm going to call it for the rest of this video. That 5/6 strap is the core. So I'm going to cut 3 of these because I want this to go the entire length of the belt, and 3 of them will cover one for my waist size. Go ahead and put that away. Alright, so Phoebing's dark brown Pro Dye, using just a wool dauber. I'm going to do 2 coats on this strap piece. First coat is just kind of cutting the dye in. I think even from this video here you can see it's kind of splotchy. It's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and run this entire strap. You could use an airbrush or a bigger, like a foam brush or something to do this as well. This is just what I have. And I've done it this way for so long that I've gotten better at it. But look, notice here how fast that dye is soaking into the leather. Now, once I've finished here, I'm going to go down to the other end and I'm going to reapply the second coat. You can see how it's not real even coverage, but now that dye is going to take longer to soak in. You can see it right there. That's what I'm looking for. Basically, it's showing that it's penetrating the leather and beginning to saturate it. And that's kind of a surefire way of making sure that you will get even coverage and you won't have any splotchy marks by doing that. So I'm going to go down the entire rest of the strap and do this. And with it being 2 to 3 ounce, you'll also notice that it is bleeding through just because there's not that much leather there to absorb the dye. Once I'd gone through and put the second coat of dye on, I used my burnishing rag. This is just a cutting from a poly cotton painter's cloth, painter's tarp rather. And you can see here that it looks a little bit more uniform, and it does have a little bit of shine, which is what I'm trying to do. I want to make this top piece look as nice as possible. Alright, and while that dries, I cut off approximately 6 inches of that core, and I'm going to run it through the strap cutter at a 1/2 inch, and this will eventually become the keeper, the strap keeper for the belt. Get the waist out of the way, and then this is a edge beveler. This is the smallest edge beveler that I have here in the shop. I don't know the exact size, but you can see how little it's actually taking off. This is just to kind of soften the edge because I will be burnishing this, and if you burnish an edge that is not beveled, it will mushroom the top over, and I don't want that, so that's why I'm knocking it down. And then I went ahead and dyed it, just like I did the top. Alright, now to the core, we're going to go ahead and put that adhesive back Dacron down. I'm going to put the first piece down, then the second piece is going to overlay, I don't know, about 3/4 of an inch over the first piece, just so that they all kind of hold each other together and that there's no stretch points anywhere on the belt. Use the scratch awl to pull it off the paper backing because this stuff is a pain to get off. Super thin, actually. Now, this is a 1-inch English point punch. Just going down to the end of the Dacron and clip that off there. Okay, so this is part of the glue up where I wouldn't do it this way again, but I'm going to show you how I did it anyways, just for the sake of honesty. What I should have done, and I didn't do it because the dye was still wet on everything else and I was trying to be productive with filming, and I should have just waited till the next day for everything to dry. But basically I put a bead of Aqualim 315 water-based contact cement right down the center of the backing, and then I went ahead and put it on one side of the core, and once I made it all the way down and everything was dry, I would stick this together right here. Now again, what I should have done is I should have glued the entire back and did all of my glue up process, which you'll see further on. I should have done it all at the same time because this was a pretty good example of doing it harder, not smarter. And also, I wasn't paying attention to these little undulations in the backing. Wasn't even thinking about it. And what happened, you'll see here in a few minutes, I'm going to roll it. Cut that slack off. Is I'm going to take a rolling pin, I'm going to roll it out. What I should have done, a couple things. One, I should have made better care of the stuff. Watch right here, I'm going to slow it down. Right there's a bubble from that backing, and when I pushed that bubble down and forced it onto the back, it did that, which looks absolutely atrocious. Luckily it is salvageable, you can fix it, but yeah, it looked really bad right then. If you wanted to do that, roll it from the backing first. Don't roll it from the inside, roll it from the outside. But using a hammer or a mallet and just tapping it down would have been better too, because you would have seen those bubbles. But if you need to, and this is where I had to go back through and glue just that edge, this is how I should have done that back, is just put a glob of glue down, and then you set it up on something that's off the bench, and you just scrape your scraper or glue brush, what have you, off the edge of the piece, and it will put glue all the way to the edge, and it will not get glue on the back. Here it is, everything dry. So I'm going to start with it in this orientation, right side up. I'm just making sure that I've got it centered on the strap. That looks good. I'm going to go a few inches, and then I'm going to flip the strap over, and I'm going to roll the core out onto the front piece. You can see here, this is why I did it, because I was struggling to keep it centered, and also I was concerned about those undulations. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually rolling it, and I'm rolling it fairly tightly because I'm trying to put pressure on it to get it all to even out and not have those squiggles. And it is better once I do this, but it still looks a little bit rough until the finished product. I did go ahead and roll it a second time, but I flipped it and I rolled on the inner lining. So I flipped it upside down and then rolled the back. Alright, here we are. I didn't do anything with the outer edges around the core yet. That was still loose. So I took this bone folder and I pushed that into the top piece down into the core and pressed that top piece all the way down on both sides. You can see here, the technical term for this is a bamba, or some, most people would know it as an inlay. And then once I had pressed it all the way down, I took that bone folder and I continued to burnish the top. Just real quickly, ran a pass all the way down the core section. You can see here that it's just getting shinier and shinier, which is pretty great. Okay, so we've gotten that all prepped out. So I lined up the ends of the belts because I know that this dress belt fits me. So I mark the point where the belt folds over, just put a little cross there. And then I'm going to go out here to the end. Now I compared it to the whole layout of my casual belt, because my casual belt has 3/4 inch spacing and this dress belt had 1 inch spacing. My favorite hole for both belts were the same, right in the center of the belts. So I knew that my length and everything was going to be good. And then I marked 5 holes total. There was that center one, and then I went 3/4 twice on either side. And then down here to the end, at the number 8 is the mark where I had the fold. I'm going to scribe a 1/2 inch from either side, so 7.5 to 8.5, that's for the bag punch. At 9 inches and 10 inches are 2 marks for holes, then at 7 inches, 6 inches. So basically you'd scribe your line, you move a 1/2 inch and then 1 inch. And then I scribed a 1/2 inch past that furthest point. And if you want to pause it here, you can see the holes or the marks. Okay, so where that scribe line was for the end, I went ahead and cut that off with a head knife. You can use the utility knife, it's fine. And then these are rounded corner punches. All right, verifying that this is still 1.25 inches. I know it hasn't changed, but I get paranoid about stuff like that, and it keeps me honest. So what I'm doing here is I'm measuring to see how big the core actually is. It's about 7/8 of an inch now with the top folded over it. So I kind of did a little math here and found that if I set my wing dividers at approximately 3/16 of an inch, that should get me to 1.25 inches overall width. So I'm doing a test scribe right here and then line it up. And yes, when I do that, it is equidistant on either side and it is 1.25 inches. So I'm going to take this wing divider now and run it all the way down the entire belt, both sides. And then when I get down here to the end, I'm just kind of eyeballing it, fudging it. I'm roughly trying to follow the radius of those corner punches. And that's why I did this, to kind of have some semblance of a consistent curve at the end. All right, on the sewing machine, I have the belt on the right side. Generally, I have it on the left, but I want that presser foot to get as close to the core as possible. And that's actually what I'm using as my guide. The presser foot doesn't step high enough to get up over the core. So that's how I'm able to get it so close. I'm just riding the core. Then I use the hand wheel. I punch it right at the tip to get it centered. And then I bring it down the other side. Okay, we'll cut those strings back a little bit. We'll melt them down a little bit, but I don't want to hit them or get them tangled up in the machine. I'm using the hand wheel to get up onto the core. And then bring it back down, and then I'm going to use the hand wheel to manually fit it into one of the existing holes, and then 6 or 8 stitches past it. We'll lock it all down. Here it is finished, and you can see the scribe marks just outside the stitching. So I'm going to use a fresh blade in my utility knife. I'm going to hold the knife as low as I can get it, like close to the table. And then I'm going to do this with 2 passes. I'm not trying to cut all the way down into a single pass. The first one is just kind of beginning the cut, and I'm following that scribe line as closely as possible. And then once I get, 6 or 8 inches down, I'll come back through with a second pass, and this one is going to cut clean through everything. Now, of course, 2 to 3 ounce is pretty thin. So on the outside, we only have between 4 and 5 ounces of leather. There's not that much. So it doesn't take that much to cut through it anyways. But this is one of those things where if I miss here, especially if I cut in towards the stitching, I could ruin the belt if I miss the cut. Or if I cut wide and I get a bubble, you can clean that up, but it will not look as, it won't dress up as nicely when I finish the edges. So this is kind of of all of the things that I've done so far, this is one the make and break. We'll speed this up and you can see I just take it a little bit at a time. I don't try to do the entire strap in a single pass. I just do what I can control in my hands. Once I cut all that stuff off, I went ahead and cut my buckle out so I could reclaim that. And then I'm going to take that corner punch and clean up down there at the end to kind of make it look a little bit more professional. Nobody's ever going to see this because it's on the inside of the belt. It doesn't mean you don't want it to look at least presentable enough. Okay, so when I cut through this with the brand new knife, that edge is basically perfect for burnish. There is no reason for me to have to sand it, but I still need to knock the corners off. So again, I'm going to take that edge beveler, the smallest one I have. And again, we're only working with between 4 or 5 ounces of leather out here on the edge of the belt. So there's not that much meat on it anyways. So we'll just zip down here. I'm going to do both sides, the front and back of the belt all the way around. You can see here just how little it's actually taking off. It's super fun trying to get an edge bevel and peel an entire belt side at once. That's always fun. But anyways, here we are. I've rounded it off. I've got a jar of water in a Canada mug. This will not work unless the mug says Canada on it. Scientific proof. Right here, I just take a wool dauber and that burnishing rag and vigorously rub this. On a bigger strap, like this belt is fairly narrow for my hands, but on a larger strap, what I'll do is I'll actually do it off the edge of the cutting table or my bench. It's easier, but you can see here how it has shined it up a little bit, and now that is smooth, including the parts that I beveled. And an alternative to running it off the side of the bench is to do it like this, to push it, or just kind of let the natural curve of the belt hold itself up like this and just push it on the bench. This is an alternative. This is acrylic edge paint. So what I did is I went ahead and I beveled this offcut that I did, and the tumbling was to stir this edge paint. You don't want to shake edge paint, you want to tumble it so that it will remix. And this is an edge painter. It's not a very good one, but this is enough for a proof of concept to show you. This is a perfectly suitable alternative to beveling. And if you like this, this is it's a durable acrylic finish. It is completely appropriate for this kind of belt. But what I'm doing is I'm rolling it out. I'm not painting it or dragging it. I'm rolling it. And I'm making sure to get on that entire raw edge, the parts that I beveled and the part that I cut with the utility knife. And then I'll let this set, and you'll be able to see what it looks like here. Generally, you'd do more than one coat, and you would sand it in between, and it would get really nice and smooth. This is just a single coat, but even so, this is proof of concept that you could do this instead of the burnish, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So now I'm going to start punching holes because the edging is done. That's the 1-inch bag punch. So I have the belt running perpendicular instead of left to right. It's up and down because I'm using the belt. I'm centering the punch left to right by looking straight down it. And that's how I'm keeping everything so straight on the belt. Here's the post for the male part of the snap. So I'm using a custom made snap setter accessory. It's like a snap holder basically. It's a male and female set, and this one, the male piece, fits in the hole. And what I can do is I can put it on the post, the male piece on the post, use this setter guide. I sight down in there, make sure it's all lined up, and then I can just drop my setter into that, and I'm actively putting pressure down on that male post. And what that lets me do is get like a nearly perfect set for these snaps. These are line 20s, not line 24s. I don't normally use 24 snaps in my stuff. Okay, so I finished those males. Now we're going to do the female post. And then I have a second setter. We have to make sure to put this on a concave anvil or it'll crush the head of the female snap. All right, so you can see here, again, this one too just fits on top of it. Line up the post, drop the setter, and let her go. So the reason I'm using antique brass is, one, that's what I have in the shop. I don't have any nickel ones. But two, with this having snaps on here, I'll be able to replace the buckle and exchange it for different colors. And this part of it with the snaps are always going to be covered whenever I am wearing the belt. So nobody is ever going to see that I may have mixed metals for this. And that's also why I used a leather keeper instead of a metal keeper. All right, so we'll go down here, we'll punch those 5 holes. Again, you can see I'm looking down the belt to make sure that it's those holes are centered left to right. All right, back to the belt keeper. Again, this is a 1/2 inch belt keeper. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get it wrapped around 2 layers of the belt, because that's how much material it's going to have to keep. And I'm trying to get that as tight as possible. You can see right there. And then I'm going to grab a scratch awl and I'm going to mark approximately a 1/2 inch of overlap. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch a couple holes for a tube rivet, and I'm just going to center that tube rivet at both ends of the keeper. So you can see the mark there. Grab a cutting board and a knife. We'll clip that down. So we got a little bit of time. If you're enjoying this, please make sure to like this video. If you'd like to see more projects, kind of an eclectic view, then please make sure to subscribe and hit that notification button. Oh, back to this, something cool. So I'm using a head knife or a round knife to skive off a little bit. It's funny, I trailed off because I was focusing on the work as if I was doing it again. So I'm skiving a little bit of this belt keeper leather off to make it thin enough that when I fold it over on top of each other, it's pretty close to the 5 to 6 ounce from the rest of the keeper. Now the line 20 snaps are tall enough that you don't have to do this. It's just old habits of mine. I started doing it a long time ago. I just never stopped. All right, so then I'm just going to center that punch equal distant from all the sides at each end. So basically 1/4 inch from left to right and 1/4 inch in. There we are. This is the tube rivet with a flared setter. And while I'm messing around with this tube rivet, if you didn't know, I actually run a part-time leather studio. That's why my shop is all filled up like this. And I make not only commissions, but pre-made things. So if you'd be interested in supporting the channel and the studio in a more personal way, the profits from the shop go right back into being able to buy supplies and materials so that I can continue to make these kinds of videos. And every once in a while, I even get to go out for dinner or something off of it. So if you're considering that, the website is parcelartisanworks.com. And I will put a link to my website in the video description, and I believe it's also in my bio. Let's go back to this. So all I did was I ran that tube rivet through and I set it on the flare part of the setter. I made sure that the strap wasn't twisted, and then I just hammered it down, and that is good enough to go. So now we're here at my favorite part, which is final assembly, because it means I have finished this project. The video is 25 minutes in approximately, and this is close to 2 hours of actual work to make this belt complete. So let's get that keeper on there. I had to find the buckle. Here we go, we'll put the buckle on. Get this snapped down. And that came out so clean. That looks phenomenal. I can't ask for anything better. And you can see that the undulations have settled out on that strap. In full disclosure, at some point I forgot to record it, but I did condition this belt with Obenauf's heavy duty leather protector and then kind of shined it a little bit more afterwards, buffed it, so that's why it has a little more luster. Here we are at the end of the video. Let's get this on for the final fitting. I hope that you have enjoyed this video and found it educational. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to throw them in down below. And if you ever are inspired to make your own belt because of this, I would love to know, because my whole goal for my studio and everything I do is so that I could pass this knowledge on how to do leatherworking. So thank you again, and have a wonderful day.